let's jump to it. This man right here, he is the backbone of this cruise. This cruise does not exist without him. Mr. Jerry Blavitt, everybody.
How about the man that you see early in the morning, you hear his voice, and you see him on? Jason, the Music Mason, ladies and gentlemen. Come on. I love you, pal. Hello, Oscar. Well, it's hard to believe that this cruise is coming to an end for this year. But the memories that we've made will always be a part of what this cruise is about. And I want to thank you on behalf of all of the artists for making us happy again, able to see you smile and making sure that you love what we do. And I thank you for that. And by the way, you only have a couple hours left to get the book. By the way, also, there's only about 8 books left. Thank God. I can get back to Philadelphia. Thank you. Thank you. You got it? Did I sign it? Well, good. Thank you very much for the love on that. Now, let me tell you about these two guys. It's called The East Meets the West. West Coast music was different than the East Coast music. So first, I think we should call the guy that created, like Chubby, a whole different dance feel with Dear Lady Twist, Quarter to Three, Not Me, and then had the good fortune to record a song that Bruce Springsteen put for him. I'm talking about Gary Anderson. Gary, would you come on out here? Otherwise known as Gary U.S. Bonds. Over here, my man. Come over here.
Okay.
You the East. You the East.
I'm the East?
You the East. Now, as I said,
I'm going to sit down.
I'll sit.
Can't take this rocking.
You know, were any of you with us when we had Dionne Warwick on it? Yeah. Let me tell you, that boat, she stood, she said, I ain't never going to do another cruise in my life. You remember that? She said, Jerry Blavitt, I love you, but this ain't going to do this ever again. But the East Coast was different music-wise than the West Coast. The West Coast was beach music, if you remember in those days, okay? But then it changed when a guy by the name of Chris Montez recorded standards, great music. And he had the great opportunity to work with Herb Alpert, who owned the record company A&M, Jerry Moss and Herb Alpert. So without further ado, here comes the West Coast, my main man, Chris Montez. Come on, my main man. Hey, my man. Sit over there, pick up your microphone. You see, he even dressed like a West Coaster. You see, we East Coaster, you dressing because you surfing all the time, right? All right. All right. Hello, Oscar. How are you? That's his manager from the West Coast. My man. My man. Boy.
Well, he got away from us.
Testing. Okay.
He's sitting way over there. You see him now?
What? Now, Gary.
Yes, sir.
And Chris, there is such a wide world that divided our music from the East Coast to the West Coast. I mean, you began, as I said, basically, what, 1958, 1959, right?
Yeah, 1959, actually, yeah.
That was it. First song.
New Orleans.
Yep, but they're going to have to do this so they can hear you.
Oh, sir.
Yeah. First song, New Orleans.
Yes, New
Now,
Orleans.
when people heard that, they thought he was from New Orleans because of the song New Orleans.
Yeah, they still think I'm from New Orleans. Yeah. I didn't get to New Orleans until, 2 years after the record was out, you know? I'd never been there. I'd love New Orleans, though, man.
Great music.
Great food. Jeez.
Yeah.
Man,
Now-
I can eat all day long. I do eat all day long when I'm there, too.
You like that Cajun thing?
I love spicy food. I love that, you know. My wife she learned how to make all that gumbo and stuff now. I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven, man.
Sound like Fats Domino, My Blue Heaven.
Yeah.
My Blue Heaven. But it was on a little label called Le Grand.
Yeah.
And we spoke about the fact that in the early days of rock and roll, all of the majors had the big hits. But then because, again, I say Dick Clark, created little labels because of Bandstand. And the label was out of Norfolk, Virginia,
Yeah.
right? And the guy that owned it basically owned a record store first.
He owned a record store, and he was a distributor for a lot of the black artists in that area.
Right.
And he had a record store on Church Street, which was called the Black Street.
I got it.
You know, and then when he got made some money, he moved up to Granby, which was called the White Street.
But he kept the group that backed you up. What were they called?
Daddy G and the Church Street Five.
And the Church Street Five.
And you know, Daddy G is still living.
Really?
He's 95 years old, and he's living in Chicago, and he fronts 5 bands.
Really?
Yeah, he works more than I do.
So we got New Orleans, and then after New Orleans,
We did Not Me was the
Not
second
Me.
was the second record, which you guys wouldn't play. You DJs wouldn't play.
I played it.
Did you play it?
You know I played everything that you did. As a matter of fact, because of me playing it in Philadelphia, Camden, there was a local group called the Orlons
Right.
who needed a hit record, and because of me playing your version,
Yeah.
Dave Alpert and Bernie Lowe went in and they covered your record, and that became the hit.
That
Because
was like what 3, 4, 5 years later, wasn't it?
Yep,
Because
exactly.
the FCC wouldn't let a lot of them play it because they said it was like too much violence, you know, with
Yeah.
and too much sex.
I've been down.
But I said, "Come on over, baby, let's have some fun."
Yeah.
They ought to hear that crap they got now.
Oh, your
They thought that was sex then. That was foreplay.
So we. I ain't heard that word at this age. So we got Gary on the East Coast doing that from 1959 on. Now we travel to the West Coast. Got a guy by the name of Herb Alpert. Got a kid by the name of Chris Montez. Chris, how did your career begin?
Well, I made a demo and just lead it to someone hearing the music, that songs I wrote, and then evolved to someone ask. I came home one day and my mother says, "You know, te están hablando todo el tiempo, quieren hablar contigo. They want to talk to you."
What?
Y la bamba. But anyway, so I said, "Mom, you got to be kidding me." I was a sophomore, and my mom said, "No." I said, and my mother never spoke English, so she got the number right. And so I called them, and sure enough, there were producers, Barry DeVorzon and Billy Mitchell.
Is this before Herb Alpert?
Yes, before Herb Alpert. So that's how I evolved from doing Let's Dance and did the whole tour with that.
Okay, is that Let's Dance? Is that the first one?
Yes, the first one.
The first one.
Yes.
But you also recorded with a girl by the name of Kathy.
Yes, later, yeah, in the same label, yeah.
Right, the same label, Kathy Young.
Yep.
A great song. Both of you, they recorded together. It was almost at the same time for Paul and Paula came out with Hey, 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 Paula at that time.
Yes, it was called All You Had to Do Was Tell Me, and it's the first song I ever wrote. It was
You have to listen to the song. I guess that you can Google it. Can they get that? The harmony between your accent, which you still have, thank God.
Oh, I do?
Okay. And
I never paid much attention to it.
A little bit.
A little bit, okay.
Yeah.
And Kathy, it's incredible. Well, she also had a hit record too at that time as a solo artist, right, Chris?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
1,000 Stars, yes.
Right. 1,000 Stars.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, you opened up for the Beatles. No, they opened up. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
they
opened up for the
me.
Beatles.
They opened up for me, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
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 That's
I
the
was
true
the
story.
headliner, yeah.
Imagine the Beatles opening up for Chris Montez.
Yeah.
What year was that, Chris?
62. No, 63, yeah. Yeah, he
He's
knows.
he-
And so it was wonderful. I got to hang out with him. I got boots made. I got suits made, and I got to hang out with the hoodlums themselves. You know, mostly Paul and John. You know, there you go.
Well, they wrote together, so consequently you hung out
Yeah,
together,
I
right?
guess so. Yeah.
Did you write your songs? Any one of the songs,
On
Chris?
the album, I did a lot of the albums.
Uh-huh. Because
Yeah.
Gary wrote basically all the things, right, Gary?
Not all of them, but all those twist things I didn't do.
Dear
Yeah.
Lady Twist. Oh no, that was
Those were like Herb Belafonte stuff. You
Yeah.
know? And we just kind of changed the music around.
Well, you know,
And that was when Frank Guida tried to steal all of it from him, you know?
You just reminded me of that. That's basically what you did was calypso type stuff.
Yeah,
right?
that was it. That was it. I was trying to catch up with Chris Montez.
Well, I always thought Gary was Mexican.
yeah,
you know,
because I have an accent.
I thought you were Italian. I thought you were talking Italian.
In fact, I was doing a concert with Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, and we were doing an interview, and they said, they asked Little Richard, so what do you think of Chris Montez? He says, I always thought he was black. It made me laugh. It just said, wow, that's funny. Real funny guy.
Well, you know, that's interesting because we talked about the Righteous Brothers. When you first heard them, you thought they were black because of the influence of the black artists back then.
Yeah.
And Gary, you just hit it on me. It was basically calypso that you were
It
doing.
was always twist up calypso, Dear Lady Twist.
Sweet, twist, Sonora.
Yeah, twist in Europe. Yeah, I did all of that stuff. It was all Harry Belafonte stuff.
Oh,
And we just kind of changed the beat around, and that was it, you know? And then Frank Guida said, you know, oh, yeah, I wrote those. I no, you didn't.
He didn't write anything. You know, back then, if a young kid wrote a song and went to the record company, I'll give you an example, Morris Levy with Frankie Lyman.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
Frankie would write, Sherman would write. These were the members of the group. And you would see Levy and Boop. He never wrote anything. But
Yeah.
in order for them to get on the record company, he would put his name. Most of the guys did that back then. We were
Yeah.
talking with a guy by the name of John Morris, who's a terrific guy. He has straightened the whole industry out. Because back then, these kids, and there were kids back then, they would go to a record company. The record company had the lawyer who would dictate on what the contract would be. Today, the artist has the lawyer who dictates to the record company what their artist is going to be.
We taught the rap guys how to do it. They came in and did it right.
Yeah.
It did.
Well, that's why you can't erase history. History will teach you the mistakes that we made,
Yeah.
and you will correct those mistakes from history. Today, people want to erase history. You can't do that. These guys would not be getting the money back then if you erased history. You can't do that.
Well, I tell you one thing. Like when I wrote the first song back then, and Guida came to me and says, "Well, what are we going to do about the publishing?" And I went, "I don't care. What do you want to do with it? You know, I don't know anything about publishing. I didn't know." So he took it.
He took his song, which he wrote, and published it. And you know who makes the money? The publisher. Because these songs today are used in commercials. They're used in movies. And even, fortunately, though, you still might get a writer's royalty on that. Okay.
I just got all of my publishing back last year.
Yeah.
Wow, you must have used a good lawyer, John Morris.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Only took me 30 years, but I got it.
But you know, drinks on the house. But we learn from the mistakes.
Yeah.
Isn't that what history is about?
Yep.
Yes.
Don't erase history. Learn from the mistakes that we made and then correct that, you see.
No, if you wait long enough, they give them back to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
By law, yeah.
because
yeah,
most of the people that
They changed
did
the
that
law.
are dead.
They changed
They
the law.
changed
That's
the
why you
law,
got
yeah.
it back.
I got all
You
my
know who
rights.
was involved with that? I think Darlene might have been involved with something like
I
that.
think she was with the Sound Exchange and all that. You know?
Yes. They went to Washington. They did the copyright law.
And Bowser.
Yeah, right, Bowser.
Bowser went in. He fought for it too, you know. He
When
tried to get me to go. I don't know what. You can't get me. I'll go in there physically fighting.
yes, you,
Don't bring me in there.
Chris.
Did a court award you the rights? It's a law now.
Yes.
It's basically a law now. That after a certain amount of years, it has to revert back to.
After 40 years, yeah. I
the-
got all my stuff back.
Yeah, I think it is something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's almost like
I still don't know the law.
Neither do I, but I know about the law.
No,
I don't know
about
it.
That's close enough.
Frank Guida, by the way, owned the record company, LeGrand. Well, were you working with Daddy G before you recorded with him? Daddy G, and you hear him talk about Daddy G. It was the band behind the things that you
Daddy
did.
G was Daddy G wasn't on New Orleans.
No,
That was Earl Swanson, who was Ruth Brown's husband.
right. Do you know who Ruth Brown was? Mama, Mama, he treats your daughter mean. Mama, he treats your daughter
That
mean.
was Earl Swanson, and then Daddy G came
Get close to you. So
with
that,
not me and
there you go.
this was my drinking arm. Yeah.
But you,
was-
yes. You want, me, you want a mic stand? You okay?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I drink enough at the bar. I ain't going. Please. He came in on not me and 2:45, and from then on in,
Right, right.
and we kept him.
You know, Ruth Brown, there were certain, we were talking about labels, LeGrand, the biggest rhythm and blues label in the early 50s into the 80s and 90s was Atlantic Records.
Yeah.
And because the biggest star was Ruth Brown, Joe Turner, going way back then, and Laverne Baker,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
Clyde McPhatter,
Yeah.
and the Drifters back in those days, you see.
Yeah.
And you worked with all of them at one time.
When Ruth Brown and Laverne Baker were on my first gig at the Howard Theater in Washington,
Wow.
D.C., you know, and that was Ruth Brown, Laverne Baker, Sam Cooke, B.B. King, the Drifters, and me.
Whoa! Had to be 1960.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's,
Ni-
and we
1960.
did the Howard, we did the Regal, we did the Royal, we did
The Apollo.
Yeah.
the Apollo.
Yes.
Yeah, we did
I
all
did
of it.
that, yeah.
We did all of the, what are they called? The
Chitlin Circuit.
the
The Chitlin
well, it
Circuit.
wasn't-
All
that
of those
wasn't the
great
Chitlin.
theaters. Yeah.
No.
The main buildings, the main
Yeah,
gig.
the theaters.
Yeah.
The main theaters.
That was it.
They don't. Now you didn't have that on the West Coast, Chris.
No, but I did the Chitlin tour with Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
It was a rough one.
The Chitlin Circuit. I'll give you an example. There were certain clubs in Philadelphia, like the Latin Casino, or Scioli's, and then there was Pep's, and then there was a place called the Showboat. All of the black artists would work
Yeah.
the Chitlin Circuit. So these were the black clubs that were owned by the Jewish people, Jewish businessmen.
Yes.
And you know, here's something very interesting in our world. The arts that we know, movies, theaters, shows, Jewish businessmen
Yes.
were
Yeah.
the people that really promoted our music.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were business people, and they saw the business that could have been done
Yeah.
from that. Look at Hollywood, Metro Golden Mayer, you know,
Yeah.
Columbia, or going back with all wonderful Jewish people who had a belief in what they were doing back in those days.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Success. Yeah.
she said money.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
that's what we're trying to get back now. You never, though, Chris, you guys, you know, it's a shock when you think about it. The things that happen on the East Coast that never happened on the West Coast. You really, I mean, you guys were, even the music was completely different back then.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Bahari brothers? Okay?
Yeah.
These were guys that were West Coast guys, and they owned modern RPM records. The Jacks, why don't you write me, darling? Send me a letter.
Yeah.
They had Jesse Belvin. They had
Yes.
all of those artists from the West
Oh.
Coast back then, you know. And Lieber and Stroller at that time had the Robins from the West Coast
Yeah.
that became known as the Coasters back in those days. So the West Coast had a whole different feel. Now, Gar, when you're working with Laverne and you're working with Ruth Brown and Clyde McPhatter, man,
Yeah.
I mean, and you were a young kid still. That had to be an experience for you.
Oh, it was. Clyde McPhatter was. I tried to emulate him. I loved Clyde McPhatter. You know, as a kid growing up, and I wanted to sing like him so bad. I even bought underwear that was too tight, so I could get those high notes.
Clyde McPhatter began singing with a group called Billy Ward and the Dominoes. And what had happened? 60-Minute Man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can't do 60 minutes anymore. What happened is that he had a drinking problem, and he got fired in 1953. And do you know who replaced him? Jackie Wilson.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jackie Wilson replaced Clyde McPhatter.
Yep.
Wow.
And what had happened is that Clyde was looking for getting together another group. And a fellow by the name of George Treadwell, who you knew, who was married to Sarah Vaughan, who was a trumpet player for Count Basie,
Yeah.
put together a group of different guys that got fired from different groups. And he called them the Drifters.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that began in 1953. And Clyde McPhatter became the lead and became, as Gary said, one of the greatest of all time. When you
Yeah.
talk about falsetto, I mean,
Yeah,
that
he was
is the
great.
cat that created that.
Yes.
Another cat was Nolan Strong,
Yeah.
The Wind.
Yep.
Wind.
And what was the New Drifters? They came out of they were the Robins, right?
They were the Robins, yeah.
Out of they were working at the Apollo.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, that's when I first met Benny King and all them. You know,
Right.
And, it was
That's
great.
yeah.
It was
When
great.
Clyde when Clyde went solo, what happened? He had gone into the service,
Yeah.
and when he went into the service, Johnny Moore then became the lead because Johnny Moore sounded like Clyde McPhatter, and then Clyde came out and became a Treasure of Love,
Yeah.
Without Love, all of those wonderful single things that he did, and then what happened is they were looking for a new lead.
Yeah.
Treadwell.
Yeah.
And they found Benny King and Charlie Thomas,
Yeah.
who were singing with a group called the Five Crowns
Right.
out of New York City. And that became the new sound of the Drifters. But the experience for you working with these cats. Now, Chris, did you ever have that experience working, other than working with the Beatles?
Well, yeah, I worked with a lot of the black acts. When I was touring with Sam Cooke, most of the Drifters were on it. Screaming Jay Hawkins and all these different artists.
Screaming Jay Hawkins coming out of the coffin.
Yeah, he's
I put a spell on you. Do you remember that?
well.
Oh my
That was
gosh!
interesting to me because I'm waiting. You know, I'm new at this, and all of a sudden they bring
Talk-
this coffin out, and he looks like he gets out like if he's a vampire. I know. And real mean looking. You know.
Me and Benny King one day at the Apollo, and Screaming Jay.
You were at the Apollo, right?
Screaming Jay
Yeah.
got into this casket, you know, because he was getting ready to go on.
Yes.
And when he got in there, me and Benny flipped the lock on.
That's
He
good.
got, and he comes on, they roll him out on stage, and the band will start playing. Doom, 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 doom. I put a spell on you. And he does that for about 3 or 4 bars, and he's supposed to jump out the car. Oh, it's your man. And he go hit the thing, and boom. And all you can hear with the boom, boom. And he goes, who the hell locked this?
Well, you know, that's like a vampire. You understand?
Yeah, right.
I mean, vampire ain't supposed to come out during the daytime.
And, we fell out. Boy, he was a little hot.
Yeah, really.
You know, when you think about, I only wish that there would be more things that, like with the artists that we do, 4 or 5 different artists
Yeah.
on a venue, because you would watch and like you wanted to wear the guy's underwear. You
Yeah.
understand? You would watch and see what they did,
Yeah.
and you emulated them. We spoke about that, and I said it when we did one of the interviews. Sammy Davis was the greatest. He could imitate everything that you did.
Yeah.
He would watch you on stage, and then come on out, and he would do a little thing that you did, and you didn't even know that he took it from you. That's how good Sammy Davis was back then. Chris, did you ever meet Sammy?
No, I never did. Never
Gary did.
Yeah, it was cool.
Let me say, and you know, when he went into Vegas, you know, he really helped so many black performers.
Yeah, he did.
He really did. Sammy was, it was a whole different world in show business back then.
No
Chris,
kidding.
Herb Alpert, how's that happen?
Well, I had a falling out after I did all my touring. I had a falling out with the company because I was getting cheated. Same old story, you know. And so the guy says, well, I'll let you go. Just write off all your assets. And I said, okay. I left because I didn't want any part of it because I wasn't going to make any money. And my lawyer at the time, later on, he told me if I don't leave, he has contractually he can keep me on the shelf for 4 years doing nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had to walk, and I walked with my head up and was disillusioned a little bit. And then I started studying music to college and university, and I decided to do this whole thing. And then this saxophone player friend of mine, his name was Bob, and he said, I got to go pick up some music from this person. I didn't know who he was referring to. And so this gentleman comes out and says, Bob, his last name was Tate, by the way. He said, we can't use your music. And out of my friend's mouth, he said, oh, by the way, this is Chris Montez. And this gentleman says, you're Chris Montez, the singer? And I said, yeah. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to school. And he said, I sure would like to have you on my label. And I said, no, I'm not interested. And that's the first time I met Herb Alpert.
Uh-huh.
Can't believe that. So he says, think about it. So I thought about it. And I came back a few months later. I said, okay, I'll give it another try because I didn't want to get into recording again. And so I was really into rock. So I was playing harmonica, and I wrote these real hard rock songs. And the staff producer helped me, and I thought it was smoking. And then he tells me a week later, he says, you know what, Herb doesn't like what we did. And I said, wow. So I said, he said, oh, by the way, he wants you to go in his office, and he's got an idea. So I walk in. Herb's a wonderful person, real hip guy, and he's very intelligent. Musically, he's got creativity like you wouldn't believe. And he says, hey, Chris, come on in, sit down. And he said, I got an idea. And he started goes, if you're feeling sad and lonely. And I said, you got to be kidding me. That's not me,
Well, you know what he did for you? He took classic pieces of material that were standards written by Harry Warren, some of the great songwriters, and he created a feel for you.
Yes.
With your voice, which was almost a tropical sound, the way he did that. Yes. Now, you made a point, which I have to ask Gary. Gary, getting out of your contract, he was able to get out of his contract. Yeah. What happened when you wanted to leave LeGrand with Frank Guida?
I just left. No, he wanted me to do so many weird, different things. I was tired of doing all those stupid songs, When he gave me that song, and the music goes round and round, whoa, 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 and it comes out here. I went, no, it ain't coming out here. I don't want it out of there, so I left.
Right.
And he says, well, then you're not going to record. I went, okay. And I went on what I call the Holiday Inn circuit. I got my band with me and Daddy G, and we went out. We started doing the Holiday Inn and all the other little hotels. And when we got to the Hilton, we were top chef.
Right. Well, you worked with me at Memories in Margate, man. We did all the clubs together.
I did all that. We weren't recording, but I was still making a little money out there here and there until I met Bruce. Yeah.
Springsteen, that is. You know that name.
And by then, the contract was over with, And he said, you want to do this song? No, he called me up. He was recording at the time. And he goes, Bonds, I want you to come to the studio. I want you to listen to this thing. They got a song that sounds just like you.
Wow.
So I went there. It was dedication.
Yes. Yes.
And I went there and I heard that. And I went, okay. He says, yeah, do that. We recorded it that day. Then he said, now what are we going to do? I don't know. What are we going to do, boss? Yeah. He said, well, let's do some more. And then I think in like 2 months we recorded like the whole album.
Amazing. Amazing.
Did it all.
It's the right time. It's everything in show business is timing.
So I've been an oldie but a goodie twice.
Chris, working for Herb Alpert, who was a wonderful trumpet player, a great musician back in those days, did he do, when you did the track, but you did the track and musicians 1, 2, 3, right?
Yeah, I walked in with Herb Alpert, and he goes, okay, guys, and he taught me the song. He got me prepped for it. He was like my mentor, and he says, okay, guys, it goes like this, and he starts humming a little bit. No, give me this kind of feel to the drummer and this and that. And once it was locked in, he said, okay, we're ready. And we started recording. And then he's standing by me when I'm singing. And he said, almost, so let's do it again. I did it again. And he said, that's it.
Yeah. Well, you know, today, guys, when any one of these artists make a song, it takes them 10 years before it comes out. In those days, you were in the studio 3, 4, 5 takes. If you didn't get it, you walked out, you came back the next day,
Yeah, right.
and you got it. Right, Gar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at me, I was recorded in the bathroom anyway.
You're right.
I did.
Well, that was the sound. If you listen to Gary's records, you really think it was in the bathroom or in a subway place the way he got that sound.
So I'd have to leave the bathroom and go down the street and then come back to the bathroom and record it again.
You know, somebody said, I'm trying to remember one of the interviews that we had, but they were talking about recording. I think it may have been Darlene. Oh, yeah, it was Darlene and Bill talking about when they recorded, all of a sudden Phil Spector would have people in the audience or where they were going to record.
Yeah.
And they'd be talking and talking and all that other stuff. And that's when, you know, Bill said, I ain't going to do this anymore, man. I'm supposed to record, and you want to parlay this into you showing people how good you are as a producer. I'm a singer. So they said, we're leaving, you know. But the one guy that used to record like that was Sinatra. And I'll give you an example. Also, Sammy. They were nightclub performers. Frank would not record during the daytime.
Yeah.
Not during the daytime. He would record after 12 o'clock at night. And he would do it at the session as he were performing on a nightclub floor. And he wanted an audience back there.
Right.
He had Petula Clark, he had John Lennon and all those sessions because he was a nightclub performer. And if he didn't get it, knocked it down in 2, he'd leave.
Yeah.
He said, that's it, Nels, I'm done. So there is a difference between a studio recorder, a performer, or a nightclub performer. And I said to Berry Gordy, he had Frankie Valli. Berry Gordy, Motown had Frankie Valli. He had Bobby Darin, all right? And he also had Sammy Davis. And I said, they never had hits on Motown. And Billy Eckstine. Right. And I said, Berry, how come you couldn't get a hit with these guys? These were major stars. He said, Geeta, they wanted to come in like they were doing a nightclub, sing the song, and would not come back to overdub voices. And the secret of Motown, he would have those artists overdub again, bring them back in again. If he didn't like it, again, and then again and again. Yeah. So, you know, that's the difference between a recording and a guy who is a studio guy and a guy who's a nightclub singer, you see.
Yeah.
Chris.
I was going to make a comment on Call Me. You know, when I finished doing the recording, I came back. I mean, I left the studio, of course. And all of a sudden, Herb Alpert, I hear the finished product, and I hear all these glasses clapping and people, you know. You think it was a live audience, and Herb Alpert put all that together, even clicking the glasses, you know, and saying...
For the sound effect.
Yeah, and then saying, yeah, Chris, that's him speaking. Saying, but I had, after those songs, then I had Nick DiCaro, which was a wonderful arranger, and Tommy LaPuma, who was a great producer who produced George Benson's albums.
Well, Tommy went on to produce jazz things, didn't he?
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Gar.
Yes.
You mentioned something which is really interesting. It was the sound, 2:45.
Yeah.
With that bap, 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 bap. How many takes on that?
We did, well, it was actually 2.
Right.
Because I sung it, and then I had to come back and sing on top of what I sung before.
Right.
Because it didn't sound right.
Right.
And we only had 2 tracks.
Right.
So we couldn't do it like we do it today.
Yeah.
So I come back and sing over the other track, who did bounce to the other. That's why you couldn't hear me in the first one.
Right. Well, the other side was just the instrumental, right?
Well, yeah. But the beginning of it, Daddy G it was an instrumental called "A Night with Daddy G."
Right.
and they didn't have any lyrics, so and it wasn't selling. So that's when Guida said, "Can you write some lyrics?" And I went, "Yeah, okay." And I went in the other room and wrote something down. I don't know what it was. And they came back and they said, "Okay, let's go record it now." And that's when we did Quarter to Three.
Wow.
And I just sung that. You know?
It's so amazing when you see what you guys here at Malt Shop Memories do. You learn about things that you would have never known about the industry and the artist and the people.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
But let me say this: we got to wrap. We got to wrap up here. This is the last interview that we're doing, guys, and the best is always kept for the last. Remember that, okay? It's like, right? I mean,
Thank you.
and I cannot thank everyone here with the crew, the sound people, Alan, and of course Jason and Mike and everyone that make this happen, because there's no other place in the world where you're going to have a cruise like this.
And he's not bad either, is he?
Yeah, I mean, he's a pretty good
Nah.
guy.
Nikita!
Remember, I got 7 books left.
Yeah.
Now, if I get rid of them, I'll buy you dinner the next time I see you. But again, thank you very much for the love that you've given all of us throughout this entire cruise. And by the grace of God, let's do it again next year. All right, guys? God bless. Thank you.
I'm Little Anthony from Little Anthony and the Imperials. Join me on the Malt Shop Memories Cruise.
The Malt Shop Memories Cruise is heading back out to sea in 2023. This is going to be one party you won't want to miss. You'll see live performances by rock and roll's biggest stars, including The Temptations, Little Anthony, Jay and the Americans, The Lettermen, Al Jardine, founding member of the Beach Boys and his Endless Summer Band, the Bronx Wanderers, Peter Asher, the Vogues, the Skyliners, the Contours, the Elegants, the Reflections, Linda Gale Lewis, sister of Jerry Lee Lewis, Bobby Wilson, Winter Dance Party, the Everly Set, celebrating the Everly Brothers, of course our main man, MC extraordinaire Jerry Blavat, and many more surprises to be added. We're sailing back to the best era in music, October 28th to November 4th, 2023, on Holland America Line's New Amsterdam, leaving Fort Lauderdale and making ports of call in Aruba and Curacao. Pack your favorite poodle skirts and Letterman jackets and get ready to relive your favorite memories while creating unforgettable new ones. All the live music, the dancing, the Q&As and interviews, and all the fun you're experiencing this week will be back next year for 2023's greatest rock and roll party at sea. Don't forget, as a valued 2022 guest, you're eligible for the lowest cabin pricing for next year's cruise, but it's only available when you book on board during this trip, so don't wait. Our friendly sales staff members are located in the Hudson Room on Deck 3 this week and are happy to assist you with your 2023 reservation. The Malt Shop Memories Cruise just keeps getting better and better, so be sure to join us in 2023.
Don't miss the boat.